The Millionaire train station was always crowded at 7:45 a.m., but nobody ever imagined that on this cold morning, a child's life would hang between the crushing steel wheels of a roaring locomotive and the trembling hands of a maid who wasn't even supposed to be there. Yet destiny had written her name into this moment long before the world knew it. Eleanor had been working at the Roswell mansion only 3 weeks, just a quiet maid that people barely looked at, except for the baby boy she loved. More than her own heartbeat, little Damien, the millionaire's only son, a child whose presence warmed her soul from the first moment she held him. And she felt something strange, a feeling that this child's life was tied to hers in a way she didn't understand. But everything became clear the moment she heard the scream that split the morning air, a scream full of terror, betrayal, and disbelief as the train station echoed with voices shouting, "Stop! Somebody help that baby!" And Eleanor turned, confused for a split second until her eyes widened in horror at the sight that froze her heart. Damien, the child she had sworn to protect in silence, lying helpless on the icy steel tracks, his little blue onesie glowing against the dark gravel, while the monstrous shadow of a speeding train emerged from the fog like a beast hungry for innocence, and she didn't even notice her own voice, a hoarse, broken cry leaving her lips as she threw herself onto the platform floor, scraping her hands, reaching out to him while her breath shattered into shards of panic. Behind her, a man in a suit ran desperately, his entire world collapsing. And although she had only seen him in photographs, Eleanor knew exactly who he was: Daniel Roswell, the millionaire father, the cold-hearted tycoon rumored to care more about his business empire than his own blood. Yet in this instant she saw a man whose soul was dying with every inch that train drew closer to his son, and Eleanor felt tears burn her eyes because she knew, deep down, that this was no accident, no tragic mistake. This was exactly what she feared since she overheard the nannies whispering in the kitchen 2 nights earlier, planning something unthinkable, talking about how the baby stood in the way of Mr. Roswell's inheritance changes because he intended to leave everything to his son, and those greedy, heartless nannies who had always treated Damien with cold hands and colder eyes had seen an opportunity to free themselves from their financial burdens by getting rid of him in a way that looked like a tragic public accident. And now here she was, racing against death, her fingers stretching toward Damien's tiny hand, while the crowd stood frozen in horror as the train conductor blew the horn again and again, fighting physics with hope, and Daniel's footsteps thundered behind her, his voice breaking as he screamed, "My son! Somebody help my son!" And yet no one moved, no one except Eleanor, who knew she had not been hired by chance. She believed that sometimes fate places ordinary people in impossible moments so they can reveal the greatness inside them, and she remembered every moment she held that baby when he couldn't sleep, singing lullabies she learned from her mother, promising silently that she would protect him from every storm, even the kind that came disguised as human faces. And now the storm was here, in the form of a steel monster racing forward. The wind from the approaching train whipped her hair back as she slid dangerously close to the edge, her ribs pressing painfully into the concrete ledge, but she ignored the pain because all she could see were Damien's eyes, wide and confused, not old enough to understand danger, yet trusting her completely. And Eleanor summoned every ounce of strength left in her trembling body, her hand closing the final, desperate gap until her fingertips brushed the soft fabric of his sleeve. And in that single second she felt the universe hold its breath, time slowing enough for her to grab his tiny arm and pull with a strength she did not know she possessed, her muscles screaming. And just when she thought she would lose her grip, a pair of strong hands locked onto her waist. Daniel had reached her, his voice shaking as he shouted, "Don't let go. I've got you, keep pulling." And together, as if guided by something greater than themselves, they dragged Damien up from the tracks and collapsed into each other's arms as the train roared beneath them, inches away from ending the story of a child who had only just begun to live. And for a moment the world was silent, the crowd staring in disbelief, some crying, some praying, as Eleanor held the baby against her chest, sobbing into his tiny shoulder, whispering, "You're safe now, you're safe." And Daniel, breathless and trembling, looked at her with eyes that carried 1,000 unspoken words, because in that moment he saw not a maid but an angel, someone who saved not only his son but also his soul. And as sirens began to approach and the nannies who had done this tried to slip away into the crowd, Eleanor knew this was only the beginning, that protecting Damien would require more courage than she had ever imagined. And viewers watching this story should remember one thing: heroes do not always wear capes, sometimes they wear aprons and carry broken hearts that still choose to love. So if you are still here, watching and feeling every beat of this moment, make sure you subscribe for Chapter 2, because the truth behind this attempted tragedy is darker than anyone expects, and the battle for Damien's future has only just begun.